Hey, what is up, everybody? I am here to give you guys the Adventures of Tom Sawyer Read Aloud series. Um, I know it's been a few weeks since I've done this series. I just haven't been able to really do it because I've been busy with other things. So I want to make sure that I put some time into this Read Aloud series. Um, it's been, yeah, I'm not at all where I want to be with this book. I've wanted to be finished with it by now, but because I've been put aside to do other projects and stuff, um, I haven't been able to finish it. So I plan on finishing this book this month. Is my goal. I'm hoping I can have it finished. Um, and I'm not at all where I want to be in the book, at least for this week. So I'm going to catch up uh, to the point where I'll be all caught up. I'm gonna read chapters 14 through 20 today. I don't know if that's exactly where I want to be, but I will at least get to chapter 20, and I'll be caught up enough where I'll be where I want to be. So yeah, let's just get right into it. Now I do want to make sure you guys know I've already read this chapter. Um, I didn't really have much of a choice. We went to Rhode Island on Tuesday, and I was told to read my book. And yeah, I mean, there was no way out of it. I usually try to find reasons to not read this book so that way I can do it in this recording, but it never really works. And it was working for a while, and I actually needed to get the recording up that day, but unfortunately, it didn't end up working out that way. So yeah, I'm just gonna start off by with this chapter. And this chapter starts on page. I actually didn't look that part up. This chapter is called Camp Life. And this chapter starts on page 102 and ends on page 108. So I'm just going to get right into it. When Tom awoke in the morning, he wondered where he was. He sat up and rubbed his eyes and looked around. Then he comprehended it was the cool gray dawn, and there was a delicious sense of repose and peace in the deep, pervading calm and silence of the woods. Not a leaf stirred, not a sound abrupt, obtruded upon nature's meditation. Bedded dewdrops stood upon the leaves and grasses. A white layer of ashes covered the fire, and a thin blue breath of smoke rose straight into the air. Joe and Huck still slept. Now far away in the woods a bird called, another answered. Presently the hammering of a woodpecker was heard. Gradually the cool dim gray of the morning whitened, and as gradually sounds multiplied and life manifested itself, the marvel of nature, shaken off sleep and going to work, unfolded itself to the musing boy. A little green worm came crawling over a dewy, musing boy. A little, no, sorry, I read a little too far. A dewy leaf um, lifting 2/3 of his body into the air from time to time and sniffing around, then proceeding again, for he was measuring. Tom said, and when the worm approached him of its own accord, he sat as still as a stone, with his hopes rising and falling by turns as the creature still came toward him or seemed inclined to go elsewhere, and when at last it considered a painful moment with its curved body in the air, and then came decisively down upon Tom's leg and began a journey over him, with his whole heart was glad. His over him, his whole heart was glad. For what that meant he was going to have a new suit of clothes, without the shadow of a doubt, a gaudy, practical uniform. Now, piratical uniform. Now, a procession of ants appeared from nowhere in particular. It went about their labors. One struggled manfully by with a dead spider 5 times as big as itself in its own arms and lunged it straight up a tree trunk. A brown spotted ladybug climbed the dizzy height of a grass blade, and Tom bent down close to it and said, "Ladybug, ladybug, fly away home. Your house is on fire, your children's alone." And she took wind and went off to see about it, which did not surprise the boy, for he knew of old that this insect was um, cred- credulous about conflagrations, and he had practiced upon its simplicity more than once. A tumblebug, which is pretty much the same thing as a dung beetle when I looked it up, came next, heaving slowly at its fall, and Tom touched the creature to see it shut its legs against its body and pretend to be dead. The birds were fairly rotten by this time. A catbird, the northern mako, lit in a tree over Tom's head and thrilled out her imitations of her neighbors in a rupture of enjoyment. Then a shrill jay swept down a flash of blue flame and stopped on a twig almost within the boy's reach, cocked his head to one side, and eyed the strangers with a consuming curiosity. A gray squirrel and a big fellow of the fox kind, kind came scurrying along, sitting up at intervals to inspect and shatter at the boys, for the wild things had probably never seen a human being before and scarcely knew whether to be afraid or not. All nature was wide awake and stirring now. Long lances of sunlight pierced down through the dense foliage, followed near, and a few butterflies came fluttering upon the scene. Tom stirred up the other pirates, and they all clattered away with a shout, and in a minute or two were stripped and chasing after and tumbling over each other in the shallow, limpid water of the white sandbar. They felt no longing for the little village sleeping in the distance beyond the majestic waste of water. A vagrant current or a slight rise in the river had carried off their raft, but this only gratified them, since its going was like burning the bridge between them and civilization. They came back to camp, wonderfully refreshed, glad-hearted, and ravenous, and they soon had the campfire blazing up. Huck found a spring of clear, cold water close by, and the boys made cups of broad oak or hickory leaves, and felt that the water sweetened with such a wildwood charm as that would be a good enough substitute for coffee. While Joe was slicing bacon for breakfast, Tom and Huck asked him to hold on a solid minute. They stepped to a promising nook in the riverbank and threw in their lines. Almost immediately they had reward. Joe had not had time to get impatient before they were back again with some handsome bass, a couple of sun perch, and a small catfish, provisions enough for quite a family. They fried the fish with the bacon and were astonished, for no fish had ever seemed so delicious before. They did not know that the quicker a freshwater fish is on the fire after he is caught, the better he is. And um, ere they reflected little upon what a sauce open air sleeping, open air exercise, bathing, and a large ingredient of hunger makes too. They lay around in the shade after breakfast while Huck had a smoke and then went off through the woods on an exploration expedition. They tramped along over decaying logs through tangled underbush upon solemn monarchs of the forest hung from their crowns to the ground with a drooping regala, I think that's what that says, of grapevines. Now and then now and then they came upon snug nooks carpeted with grass and jeweled with flowers. They found plenty of things to be delighted with, but nothing to be astonished at. They discovered that the island was about 3 miles long and a quarter of a mile wide, and that the shore it lay closest to was only separated for it by a narrow channel hardly 200 yards wide. They took a swim about every hour, so it was close upon the middle of the afternoon when they got back to camp. They were too hungry to stop to fish, but they fared subterfugeously upon cold ham and then threw themselves down in the shade to talk. But the talk soon began to drag and then died. The stillness, the solemnity that brooded in the woods, and the sense of loneliness began to tell upon the spirit of the boys. They fell to thinking a sort of undefined longing crept upon them. This took dim shape presently. It was Button homesick. Even Finn the red-handed was dreaming of his doorsteps and empty hogshead. But they were all ashamed of their weakness, and none was brave enough to speak his thought. For some time now the boys had been dully conscious of a peculiar sound in the distance, just as one sometimes is of the ticking of a clock which he takes no distant note of. But now this mysterious sound became more pronounced and forced a recognition. The boys started glanced the boys started, glanced at each other, and then each assumed a listening attitude. There was a long silence, profound and unbroken. Then a deep, sullen boom came floating down out of the distance. "What is it?" exclaimed Joe under his breath. "I wonder," said Tom in a whisper. "'Tain't thunder," said Huckleberry in an odd tone. "Because thunder—" "Hulk," said Tom. "Listen, don't talk." They waited a time that seemed an age, and then the same muffled boom troubled the solemn hush. "Let's go and see." Um, they sprang to their feet and hurried to the shore toward the town. They parted the bushes on the bank and peered out over the water. The little steam ferry boat was about a mile below the village, drifting with the current. Her, her broad deck seemed crowded with people. There were a great many skiffs rowing about or floating with the stream in the neighborhood of the ferry boat, but the boys could not determine what the men in them were doing. Presently a great jet of white smoke burst from the ferry's boat, and as it expanded and rose in a lazy cloud, that same dull throb of sound was borne to the listeners again. "I know now," exclaimed Tom. "Somebody's drowned." "That's it," said Huck. "They done that last summer when Bill Turner got drowned. They shot a cannon over the water, and that makes him come up to the top. Yes, and they take loads of bread and put quicksilver in 'em and set afloat, and wherever there's anybody that's drowned, they'll float right up there and stop." "Yes, I've heard about that," said Joe. "I wonder what makes the bread do that." "Oh, it ain't the bread so much," said Tom. "I reckon it's mostly what they say over it before they start it out." "But they don't say anything over it," said Huck. "I've seen 'em and they don't." "Well, that's funny," said Tom. "But maybe they say it to themselves. Of course they do." anybody might know that. The other boys agreed that there was reason in what Tom said because an ignorant lump of bread, uninstructed by an incantation, could not be expected to act very intelligently when sent upon an errand of such gravity. By jins, I wish I was over there now, said Joe. I do too, said Huck. I'd give heaps to know who it is. The boys still listened and watched. Presently, a revealing thought flashed through Tom's mind, and he exclaimed, Boys, I know who's drowned. Did. It's us. They felt like heroes in an instant. Where here was a gorgeous triumph. They were missed. They were mourned. The hearts were breaking on their account. Tears were being shed, accusing memories of unkindness to these poor lost lads were rising up and unavailing regrets and remorse were being indulged, and best of all, they departed were the talk of the whole town, and the envy of all the boys, as far as this dazzling notoriety was concerned. This was fine. It was worth while to be a pirate. As twilight drew on, the ferry boat went back to her accustomed business, and the skiffs disappeared. The pirates returned to camp. They were jubilant with vanity over their new grandeur and the illu- illustrious trouble they were making. They caught fish, cooked supper, and ate it, and then fell to guessing at what the village was thinking and saying about them, and the pictures they drew of the public distress on their account were gratifying to look upon, from their point of view. But when the shadows of night closed them in, they gradually ceased to talk and sat gazing into the fire, with their minds evidently wandering elsewhere. The excitement was gone now, and Tom and Joe could not keep back thoughts of certain persons at home who were not enjoying the fine frolic as much as they were. Miss Grievance came, they grew troubled and um, unhappy. A sigh or two escaped unawares. By and by, Joe timidly ventured upon a roundabout feller as to how the others might look upon a return to civilization. Not right now, but Tom withered him with der- derision. Huck, being uncommitted as yet, joined in with Tom and then wavered quickly, explained, and was glad to get out of the scrap with a little taint of chicken-hearted homesickness clinging to his garments as he could. Mutiny was effectually laid to rest for the moment. As the night deepened, Huck began to nod and presently to snore. Joe followed next. Tom lay upon his elbows motionless for some time, watching the two intently. At last he got up, consciously on his knees, and went searching among the grass and the flickering reflections flung by the campfire. He picked up an unexpected several large semi-slenders of the thin white bark of a sycamore, and finally chose to which which seemed to suit him. Then he knelt by the fire and painfully wrote something upon each of these with his red keel. One he rolled up and put in his jacket, and the other he put in Joe's hat and removed it to a little distance from the owner. And he also put into the hat certain schoolboy treasures of almost inestimable value, among them a leaf of chalk, an Indian rubber ball, three fish hooks, and one of that kind of marbles known as a sure enough crystal. Then he tiptoed his way cautiously among the tree till, till he felt that he was out of hearing, and straightway broke into a keen run in the direction of the sandbar. and then that's the end of the chapter. So yeah, I thought that was a pretty good chapter right there. The beginning's pretty much all the boys adjusting to camp life and their new lifestyle as being pirates and stuff. And then the end. Then you have that scene obviously where they have that crowd of people coming up throughout the town, and obviously they think that a lot of the people will probably assume that Tom, Joe, and Huck all drowned because I'm assuming that that was the last place people know that they were at, so they probably assume they just went swimming and drowned. Um, which kind of makes you feel bad for like Tom's family and stuff because they're probably devastated. And I think obviously you can see that the boys are homesick because I think even though Tom and all of them wanted to get away from you know the current life, they still probably missed uh, the certain things about it. Tom obviously probably misses his family. Joe probably misses his, and Huck misses the way his lifestyle used to be. But I still think they like their current lifestyle. And then obviously too, you have at the end, you have Tom kind of sneak off to go do something. Doesn't necessarily say what it is, but we'll probably find out in the next chapter. So overall, I thought that was a pretty good chapter right there. Not the best chapter, but a pretty good one. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I forgot to plug it in the beginning, but make sure you click right up there on that playlist for my Tom Sawyer Read Aloud series, chapters 1 through 13. And make sure you subscribe to this channel for more content. Make sure you click on the bell so that way every time I upload a video on this channel, you'll get the notifications for it. Make sure you also subscribe to my CM Brothers channel because I also upload content on there. And make sure you click on the bell on that channel so that way every time I upload a video on that channel, you'll get the notification for it. And that's pretty much it, guys. Talk to you later.